Hello, welcome to week 5 of Solo Ship, the single entry show I usually do with JM, but here with Hillo. So we got an injury replacement, and as you can tell if you've been watching the show the previous weeks, I'm not in my normal setup either. So we're gonna crank it out, take a look at week 5, and hope for the best. Please ignore the strange shape of my head, as I don't have a green screen this week. so the blur and the background are all fading in and out. But hello, great to meet you. I've been a big fan of your work at 1 Week Season. Looking forward to talking some football with you. How are you doing this week?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on for to quell all the rumors. Jam is not actually injured; he's at a wedding, so he's got some internet issues with himself. So yeah, excited to jump in here, man. And I've been following you for years, so it's cool to meet you and excited to talk some football, man.
Yeah, it's injuries are on my mind, right? Because it's Friday afternoon. That's when we're
yeah.
It's like seeing all these injuries. Oh, this guy's questionable. This guy's doubtful. This guy's out. And it's like, so yeah, just everything's an injury in my head at this point. It's an interesting week. It's one of those weeks where we got a few high total games, but there's like a trade-off because you got the high total games that have the big spreads with some of the players that like are sure to be popular and like put up big points every week. And then you've got some games that are maybe a little bit closer, have a little bit of a lower total, but not sure how the offenses are going to do. And then you've got some games that like I don't think we really have any total crap games this week. I think we got that out of the way. I think Thursday night, hopefully. There are some games that I think could kind of sneak in, maybe are getting a little bit overlooked. Any general thoughts before we jump into the week?
Yeah, super weird slate with like obviously there's 3 teams that are gonna garner a lot of ownership and a lot of attention from the field, rightfully so. Like you have the Bills, the Eagles, and then the Bucks, who, those are the high Vegas implied team total teams. The Bills at 30 with a 14.2 touchdown spread over the Steelers. And then obviously the Bucks, Vegas implied team total at 28. They're 10-point favorites over the Falcons. And then the Eagles kind of are in that like tier 1A or tier 1B, we'll call it, for Vegas implied team totals at 26, almost 27 points. They have a lower spread at 5 points on the road there against the Cardinals. But then there's 7 games that land within, I call it like the magic range of game totals, right? Like the 43 to 47.0 game totals, which is kind of where like Vegas doesn't really know what to do with these games. So the variance associated with that kind of game total, there's a wide range of outcomes in those games, and there's 7 of those games this week. So it's a really fun slate from that sense, in the like from the sense that you can be different without like making these suboptimal plays pretty easily on a slate like this.
It's interesting. I didn't know where you were going to go with that third team. And so I agree. Like, I think Buffalo is going to be really popular. I think Josh Allen might be the highest owned quarterback going forward almost every week in and week out. I mean, we'll see what they do with his price. But this is an interesting week because it's a big spread over the Steelers. And so right away, start thinking, like, I don't know if I need to play these Bills. Like, and maybe like Devin Singletary is like the Bill I'm the most interested in, because they could just, they could get out to a big lead and shut it down a little bit, especially if Pickett and Pickens, right?
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
I mean, if like they've got, like, I'm reading the 1 week season write up, like they were talking about how the Bills have a defense that like to confuse quarterbacks. This is a guy making his first NFL start. I mean, it could be a disaster. And I mean, long term, I think it could be good. It could be good. It could be great. I think maybe the Steelers offense is a boost going forward, but this game could be trouble. And that could be trouble in terms of like peak performance for the Bills offense. And then I think Tampa Bay actually has a pretty good setup this week where they have a high implied team total, and you've got like the Brady narratives, and pretty good prices. Like, so like Brady's not that expensive. Chris Godwin's kind of priced down. Leonard Fournette is never as expensive as he should be. So like, I kind of knew you were going to go Bills, Buccaneers. I actually like the Saints. I'm just taking an initial look at things. I'm getting a lot more New Orleans players than Philadelphia players, because like Michael Thomas is out. That boosts up the other receivers like Landry and Chris Olave.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So they boost those guys up. Alvin Kamara has had a dramatic price reduction. He's coming back from an injury. I'm going to end up with like a lot of Alvin Kamara. I know. I know.
Yeah.
Like he's one of those guys that like on Sunday morning I'm going to have to like be setting these caps because I'm just going to pop off like a bunch of Alvin Kamara. And I'm not getting that many Philadelphia guys because I think they've only got 1 point over the Saints. I think in the implied point totals.
Yeah.
But they're much more expensive, and it was always kind of uncomfortable. Like I don't know, can I run out Jalen Hurts without a run back at receiver? If I do, which one do I use? Like AJ Brown's expensive. Like I like going with Devontae Smith sometimes, but then like sometimes he just disappears. Tight end's an interesting position because like that's a possible pairing right there. Is Dallas Goedert, and tight end is like a wasteland with no Kelsey on the slate, no Mark Andrews on the slate. Greg Kittle playing a different position at left tackle. So tight end's like a real wasteland, but then you get those interesting, like, because there's a couple of injury fill-ins, like Kyle Pitts is out, and Cameron Braid is out, which wouldn't normally be a big thing, but like the Tampa Bay's got some rookie, I think that's I don't even know if he's a rookie. I just a guy I've never heard of.
Cade Otton, Cade Otton.
Minimum price. I just assume he's a rookie.
Exactly.
So it's an interesting slate. And there's all kinds of interesting things, dynamic shaping up in the NFL this season, where you've got these really good running quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Jackson's not on the main slate this week, but you've got their running backs too, like with like Singletary and Miles Sanders. I'm starting to like the idea of like pairing the Russian quarterbacks with the other team's running backs. So like a lot of Josh Allen, like Miles Sanders pairings, just because like what if it's a Miles Sanders week and then suddenly Hurts isn't the quarterback and Josh Allen is, and you're like getting all of those points and it's like leverage. I don't know.
Yeah.
These are the things I think of.
There's a couple of like deep-seated innate like human nature tendencies that are like from human psychology standpoint that I think you brought up that are really important with that. Like one is like how we have to think through like how rushing quarterback ceilings are unlocked, and I think the general tendency from the field is like you can play them solo because they can do so much on the ground. Well, it's like when you look at like how these quarterbacks, these mobile guys have performed historically, it's like when they hit like a 90% outcome ceiling game, they're bringing at least one pass catcher with them. The rushing floor is like a boost to their floor where they can, hit 25 points without bringing a pass catcher. But when we're talking like GPP ceiling, like these guys are bringing a pass catcher along with them. And like AJ Brown is like top 5 in the NFL in team target market share. They're using him. They paid for him. They're using him. So like, even though it's uncomfortable to like pay up for a high priced pass catcher with a mobile quarterback, it makes a lot of sense from a like capturing bulk points all at once kind of perspective. The other side of that is like Josh Allen, because that offense is so spread, like Stephon Diggs is like 25th or something like that in team target market share this year. Because that offense is so spread, you typically don't want to be paying up for like a primary alpha type wide receiver because you're paying such a high price for not the same comparable like team target market share on that offense. I like Isaiah McKenzie a ton this week because he's very natural stack partner with Josh Allen. He has a big red Q tag, so he's probably not going to get a lot of ownership coming off of that concussion. But what do we have like working for him? Like Jamison Crowder has been sharing slot time with McKenzie, and now he's out. So like, is the team comfortable running Khalil Shakir in Jamison Crowder's role, like splitting with McKenzie? We don't know, but like there is opportunity for McKenzie's role to grow this week. And he makes like for a cheaper, combinatorial price pairing with Josh Allen this week.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Is these offenses get popular and then they get priced up, like we're seeing I think with Buffalo and Philadelphia, and like in order for the really expensive wide receiver, the Stephon Diggs, the AJ Brown, to get there with the quarterback, like they've got to be catching multiple touchdown passes. And then it's almost like if the drives are ending that way, then maybe the quarterback's not having the extreme outlier game he needs to have because he's not rushing in the touchdowns. And like pairing them with the cheaper option sometimes makes a lot of sense. Like, pairing them with the Devontae Smith or who's the third, like Quez Watkins.
Quez
right?
Watkins, yeah. The 3-target Quez.
Yeah, and but like if he takes one to the house, then because he's going to be cheaper. I mean, I didn't look at like Quez Watkins' price before the show. But I'm just assuming like he's much cheaper. And then like Shakir, the Bills rookie, is interesting because he's pretty cheap. He hasn't appeared in a lot of games so far, but like you expect the rookies opportunities to grow as the season goes on. And Dawson Knox is out as well, so like that's a red zone target. And it'll be interesting because like if Crowder's out and Knox is out, then you actually do start to get some Bills pieces that are a little bit cheaper, whether it's Mckenzie or Shakir, or I don't know who they're going to roll out. It's like Quinton Morris. Did I make that up?
A tight end? Yeah. No, I think you're right. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. They're going to have to put somebody out there at tight end. I don't know if he's a pass catcher. I think his name's like familiar to me because of showdowns. So it's like
exactly. Min price tight end too, baby.
Yeah. So there's some interesting tight end options, and it actually, like, Tyler Higbee is probably going to get a ton of ownership from both FanDuel and DraftKings, and he's not somebody I'm going to like X out or try to totally avoid. But the ownership might actually get out of control with at the tight end position now that I think about it, because everyone's going to be going to Higbee, and like some of these guys are priced at 2,500 and just need on DraftKings it's like 4,500 on FanDuel, and like they can pay that off with a touchdown. Like if Quinton Morris, Reggie Gilliam, whoever the Bills guy is, like if he just gets a touchdown at 4,500, suddenly he's main slate relevant at a week when there's no other tight end options.
Yeah, that's like it's the tight end position this year is like it's halves where it's like Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, and it's have-nots like everybody else. Like those are the two guys that can put a slate like out of reach where you had to have them or you're not winning anything. The fact that those two guys are not on this slate, I want to be embracing as much variance, like from a theoretical standpoint, at a high variance position, because those guys are not on the slate. They cannot put it out of reach. So now we're basically in this like nebulous hunt for touchdown at a high variance position where it's like, I kind of want to be leaning into that even from a single entry mindset where it's like, I'm looking for a touchdown, and it doesn't matter how pricey or not pricey a guy is. If they score, then they can be relevant this week.
Yeah. And there's like Parker Hesse, somebody's filling in for Kyle Pitts, and like
I haven't even uncovered that one yet.
Yeah, I was looking. Again, it's like a guy I've never heard of. I'll presume he's a rookie. I don't know. But like he actually had about as many receptions so far this season as Kyle Pitts did. And so maybe that's something you're interested in then, but maybe it's something not. But like Pitts is a little bit more expensive, even though his price has been dropping. But he's certainly more popular than like Parker Hesse will be. And so that's another presumably a 2,500 or minimum priced tight end option. But like, so it gets me actually onto the topic of run backs, because I think that's going to be the Tampa game. And there's like, it's possible Tampa Bay just rolls, and there's no one you need to bring back because they've got Cordell Patterson's out. So they've got the rookie Tyler Algier. But I don't know if I want to be playing like a primarily rushing running back, a non-pass catching running back in a game where they might be down big. And then this is actually something that's going through my mind with Arizona as well. Because like I do think with like if you're playing some of those Philly guys, like if you're playing Jalen Hurts stack, are you running it back with an Arizona guy? It's like just any general thoughts on the run backs, not running backs, but the run backs this week, right? Like do you have like, and then like Pittsburgh as well, because it could be an underrated situation with the rookie quarterback. Maybe that like Buffalo Pittsburgh game explodes a little bit, and like if Pittsburgh's able to keep it relevant, but maybe not. Like maybe the Bills defense is the play you want from that from that game, and you don't want to be playing any Pittsburgh guys at all.
I think there's a couple interesting angles to consider there. Like one, Drake London, for talking back to Tampa Bay, Drake London is like second in the league in team target market share right now as a rookie. So he's like seeing like 35% plus of the targets so far. in Atlanta. So we know that Atlanta is like trying to base their identity around the run game. They have like the top ranked offensive line, run blocking offensive line this year. But like if they're forced to throw more, and we already have seen Drake London be this massive part of the offense, there is room to grow from a targets perspective there for Drake London. So I really like him as just a natural bring back in Tampa. As far as like Buffalo and Pitt players that are not named Deontay Johnson are extremely cheap. So like, I don't know if I'm going to be going to Chase Claypool, particularly in single entry. But the Pickett to Pickens connection, he was targeted like 4 times out of 13 pass attempts once Pickett came in. So, and he's priced at like 4.3. So that is actually something that like you can capture, theoretical upside still at a basement price at 4.3. So I do have some interest there as a run back for my Buffalo stuff. And then as far as Arizona, I just think Arizona's offense is so broken right now because they're like this like Cliff Kingsbury air raid offense, but it's like their offense is built to stretch a defense horizontally first. And then they're built to take advantage of deep passing off of that. And it's like they don't have like DeAndre Hopkins to be this like prototypical X wide receiver to be this like spread the field horizontally. They're getting like Rondale Moore back, but when we look at like how Hollywood Brown is being utilized, he's like trying to be like fit this square peg into a round hole right now because their offense is so broken. So like that kind of limits the upside of like the offense. We're not seeing like designed runs from Kyler Murray after he, dating back to last year after he hurt his shoulder. So like, I don't think you need a bring back. And I would actually be more like, from a theoretical sense, interested in like an onslaught type build with Philly, where you're also including their defense, which is kind of something that I don't think the field is really paying attention to at all.
It's interesting. I actually just did a write up on RotoGrinders about how I think it could be Arizona's week to playing. It's fine. I've been writing that up every week. Don't worry.
yeah, it'll happen at some point, right?
It does. I do think the game has potential. Like, so it's not something that I'm going to be going crazy with. It's more related to the question of like what player under 5% do you think could like break the slate? Like Kyler Murray is now at under 5% projected ownership on both sites. So it's a thing I could see. Although I think he's like a rushing quarterback, and it's possible. I was saying earlier on the show, one of the previous weeks, that there could be a thing that once the team signs a guy to the big contract, like they don't want to rush him anymore. And maybe he doesn't like want to be, his incentive to put up big rushing numbers is not as big either. And maybe that's a factor with Kyler Murray. It seems like there's a dysfunction there somewhere, and it's affecting the offense. But I do think a home game at low ownership, it's something that I'm interested in, in large field tournaments, in single entry, because I think Kyler Murray and the wide receivers and like Zach Ertz are going to have a lower ownership than their potential of going nuts. Interesting that you really went into depth there with the Drake London thought, and I actually appreciated that because I've been looking at like some of the target share stuff, but I've been thinking, he's got big target share, but they don't throw the ball, right? So it doesn't matter, right? Because those not getting that many raw targets. But you bring up a good point that if the game is at a point where they have to throw the ball, then for that game, which is the only thing we care about for our lineups this week, that they could see an inflated, number of targets, right? Like if the target share stays the same, number of total pass attempts goes up, like his targets could go up, and so that could be a big game where we're not necessarily expecting it. So the show's on single entry, and we kind of talked about some of the different ways of approaching some of the popular games this week. Are there any games that we haven't talked about other than like the big ones that we touched on? Like any games that you think are going to be dramatically underowned, and where just stacking up that game in single entry, where nobody else has it or very few people have it, could give you an edge?
Yeah, there's 2 games that are kind of catching my eye from that perspective this week. The first one probably is going to carry more ownership than the second one combined. But the first one is the Chargers and the Browns. These are 2 teams that played to like a 69-point game total last year. And they have the pieces and the explosiveness to really set that game off. They talk about like Nick Chubb, like where is he useful? He's useful on lineups where he is breaking long runs. And you talk about like a Chargers defense who is giving up like, I think it's the most yards per running back carry in the league this year, but something like it's either top 5 or like the most. I forget. I have to go look. But and then you look at the Chargers, and Keenan Allen has not practiced. I haven't seen an update from Friday injury report, but like if he's out, and then with Jalen Guyton also out, is like their field stretcher, there is a more condensed target tree to where like I am interested in like Herbert, Eckler, and Mike Williams stacks and bringing it back with Chubb and just like targeting that game environment heavily on like a single entry or a 3 max roster where I can kind of diversify over separate contests, particularly targeting that game environment, because I don't think the single entry field is going to be on that game environment overly, as much as the chances of it really taking off. The second one is actually, this is probably the more controversial one, but it's the Lions and the Patriots. And we look at like, what is likeliest to drive that game environment? Well, it's likely that the Lions are responsible for really driving that game environment, because we kind of know how the Patriots are most likely going to be attacking here. And one of the things that I've been toying around with is actually, I guess, stepping back a minute, like why are the Lions allegedly like going to be the ones driving the show here from a game environment perspective? They've scored the most points per game in the league at 35 points per game. We talk about like, what are the steps like to really having a game environment take off? We need offenses to score touchdowns, and we need their defense to be really kind of crappy. So like the Lions have scored 35 points per game through 4 weeks, and they've given up 35.3 points per game through 4 weeks. So it's like they're scoring the most points in the league and they're allowing the most points on defense. Like that is something that like they could be playing the Bears and I would still have interest in, right? And one of the like more nuanced aspects of that I've been toying around with is both New England running backs on a roster, which is like they're both priced at like 5.6 and 5.5 or something like that. So like combined salary of 11.1, like they have the ability, and now that it's only a 2-person backfield instead of a 3-person, they have the ability to like combine for 200 yards and 3 scores. Like that's within their range of outcomes this week.
Interesting. Yeah. So people don't like uncertainty. I think both games you touched on there have a lot of uncertainty, and people are starting to develop their rosters in their heads like Friday and Saturday. And they don't like the idea. Like, I don't know who's going to be catching the ball for the Chargers, right? Like who do I pair with Justin Herbert? Like I know Justin Herbert's a really good quarterback, and like Williams could get there. Like I don't know about is Keenan Allen in play? I don't know. But that's actually, I was thinking Gerald Everett's there because that's a tight end is going to be a position we struggle to fill this week, and he seems to be getting more targets like with Keenan Allen out. And it's a kind of sometimes have to embrace the uncertainty, or maybe if Keenan Allen is in, last minute, then maybe that's a place you go, because you could see some targets there. And people don't like the Cleveland offense at all. Like people don't like to play Jacoby Brissett, and they're probably not going to pass the ball. Like I don't want to play Jacoby Brissett either, but then that makes the number of game stacks of that game decrease. So there's some uncertainty. And then like New England, there's a ton of uncertainty. I have no idea who's playing quarterback. Zap?
Yeah, it's probably going to be him because Hoyer was already ruled out.
Yeah. And I think Mac Jones is out. I think he was ruled out today.
Okay.
Check that. Yeah. But I think he was ruled out. But we've seen Bill Belichick literally not pass the ball in games, right? Like already like, had one pass attempt or like 3 pass attempts with Mac Jones as the quarterback. And if the Lions have a terrible defense, then if they have success running the ball, he might not stop running the ball. Like he might, he doesn't care if there's some headline that you only had 3 pass attempts in this game and they're on their third string quarterback. Well, yeah, like if we're running the ball and they can't stop us, why would I stop running the ball? So it's really interesting. And no one would ever pair 2 running backs. Like and both of those games, right, are games you could potentially pair both running backs in the same lineup with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. or Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris.
Yeah.
So a couple of really interesting thoughts there.
Yeah, and I think it's like the percentage chance of those respective game environments like being the had to have it game this week is probably higher than the combinatorial ownership of those respective games. So those are like just the leverage situations that are you can get access to so much upside without like introducing suboptimal plays. Like you're not betting on like the Cleveland passing game when we know the kind of like the identity of that team is going to be biased towards the ground and the matchup sets up for that. Well, you can still get access to all that without like trying to, guess, is it an Njoku week or is it like, are these other secondary kind of options going to be, is it their time to shine? Well, it's like, we can still make, plus EV bets without sacrificing like suboptimal plays.
Yeah. And people think now in terms of stacking. I think for years that people have been thinking in terms of stacking, and you tend to see the running backs that rise to the top of projections be guys that are in high scoring games. At the running back position. So like Leonard Fournette will be popular this week. And I think he's a good play. And like, I think Alvin Kamara will be popular. I think that's a good play, but people will overlook like Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and the New England running backs, like are perennially, every week, like nobody owns them because they are always in games that have low scoring, low implied point totals, low totals for the game. But like why not play one of those New England running backs if New England's on their third string quarterback? Like they might go in with a game plan against a bad defense of we're just not going to throw the ball. Like we're just going to rush the ball an obscene amount of times. And and you don't have to play both of them. Like you could just pick one. It's difficult to pick because you don't know which one is going to get there. And you can, I think it's plausible to play both this week for New England, especially. I think, even for Cleveland, depending on the contest that you're in. And I haven't really taken a look at the prices, to be honest, either. But if you know the team is going to go in with a game plan of we're just going to run the ball and we're just going to keep running it, like take one of those running backs from one of those games that might be projecting a little bit lower and might have a little bit of a lower implied point total, lower Vegas total, but the running back could end up with 150 yards and 2 touchdowns and be the guy that breaks the slate at 1 to 2% ownership.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I also found in researching for that specific game, the Detroit and New England game, is like there's been all this talk about this probably over the past 2 seasons about like offenses adapting to beating cover 2, cover 3, and 2 high defensive schemes. Well, it's like, Patrick Mahomes was talking about it 2 years ago. Last year, Justin Herbert was talking about it. This year, we've seen Joe Burrow talking about it in Cincinnati. Like, how are we adapting our offensive mindset to beat these type of schemes? Well, and then we have a game like Detroit and New England, where those are the 2 teams running the most man coverages in the NFL this year. So like we're kind of like into the previous like 5 years of the NFL with these 2 teams specifically playing each other. And that opens up a lot from like a splash play potential. It opens up a lot from like running lanes, talking about like a standard like 3-4 base cover 2 defense. It's a little bit easier to cover B gap runs. It's a little bit easier to cover off tackle runs because they have an extra linebacker like dedicated to keeping an eye on that. When you get like these man coverages, you get a lot of like secondary, like safeties, or not necessarily safeties, but like cornerbacks with their back turned to the play because they're worried about their man coverage. And that's where you get like these chances for 25, 35 yard runs, these like the B gap runs, the off tackle stuff. And New England's going to be utilizing a lot of that. And it opens up, chances for Detroit to kind of like find their way back into the game because they have players that can beat man coverage. Like even Josh Reynolds is like in the top 24 in PFF rating against man coverage this year. So like they have the pieces. TJ Hawkinson is like the 3rd best tight end against man coverages. So they have the pieces to like keep this game and pushing it and keep this game environment being driven towards like some upside.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's the kind of football knowledge that I just don't possess. It's rare to find like that kind of like, being able to combine like the football knowledge with the potential game planning of what the teams can do. It's one of the things I really like about 1 week season is getting into the coaching tendencies, because that tends to be something that's more consistent than even the player performance. Is what is the team going to try to do? I mean, that's a game plan that they can control and tends to be consistent from coach to coach. And I think that's really good insight. All right, any final thoughts on the week? Anything you're looking at that we didn't go over?
I don't think so. I think the general feeling from this slate is like, how are you going to handle tight end, and where are you going to allocate like salary? I think a lot of people are going to be looking for certainty when it might not be there. So like Stephon Diggs, like the perceived certainty that comes with paying up at the wide receiver position, I think is going to be the general trend from the field this week. And so like paying up at running back ×2 is like a really easy way. Like we talked about how to leverage that through a specific game environment, but like there's also like, things that you can do just to, again, like make plus EV decisions without introducing suboptimal plays. And I think that's really, really, from a basic roster construction mindset is going to be super important this week, because there is literally just not as much certainty on the slate, because all the high game total games are these wide spreads, and then we have this lump of 7 other games that are all kind of tightly compacted. So like back to basics this week is going to be huge.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, I think embrace the uncertainty, because like what you tend to see is you see the cash game, people want to be certain, right? So they go for the cash game kind of construction, the cash game players, and that leaks over to the single entry tournaments. And I think that's where you can get an advantage.
Yeah, right. It's been a bummer though. But like 2 weeks so far out of 4, we've seen like cash game plays just absolutely smash. Like last week, Jamal Williams, and like, so I'm looking forward to that not being the case in single entry.
Yeah, hopefully it's a good tournament week. Yeah. All right, well that'll do it. I'm Squirrel Patrol. This is Hello. It was great talking, and good luck this week.
Thanks, man. Likewise.